Hello, this is video number 5, from Cain and Abel through the covenant with Noah and all of creation. Part 1. What do we begin with from origin in a fallen state of being? In a fallen state, love is in a functioning and emotional base, attributable for the good, to create and creating, a chemistry-based composite of the presence of the created, being love and good, God's presence and the exist element. When good is detached from love and can be used by evil, even as it serves the created, the good is nurturing. Evil, at its most comprehensive and inclusive of purpose, with good, can only be called intelligent evil. Evil is not relational in itself. Evil is only separation, negation, death, which was originally darkness, that is a created parallel or exist element for light, to help create, sustain, progress, not to be more or less than space, distance, freedom of will for being and creating. Thus, what follows. When survival of the fittest becomes integrated from a creational view alone, Cain is a mighty man of renown and a hero of old. The full portrait of his being is in his cunning, psychopathic advantage with deep emotion, and all the acts of his life, in the full of his life, leads to what many great leaders have, but not all good and evil people: the ability to deny or overlook the fallen state in itself, in Scripture's words, and think of origin as only progression. What Cain began, and those that follow progress, is his acts of sacrifice to God, based on denial of the fallen state, leads to murder, becoming the means for larger extermination, for sacrifice, and most important, experiment and creating as part of the progression, with some advantage after the fact. This ideological romantic metaphysic is the founding act over and over in different ways, as found in Scripture and the creational progression, to reduce the created to what they are made of, not what they are, and is why all great creational orders and civilizations lead to Babylon the Great. Thus Cain is spoken of highly in Genesis for his good, builder and leader of a city, and his evil as an example to others in Scripture's record. That God was good to him and protective speaks to God's love and grace. That foreshadows all aspects that are part of the progression. This also leads to God's remorse for creating. Part 2. What is less recognized, except by God's words in Scripture, is Abel was the first spoken prophet of God, and his murder, and yes, martyrdom, was because he, Abel, understood what was needed to be offered as sacrifice, was embodied in the acknowledgement of the fallen state, and most important, his full relation with God, through the right post-fallen sacrifice and words. Cain relates to Abel as his persecutor, and thus tells God the punishment is too great. This begins a subtext in Scripture for the replacement of God without God, as without Jesus being God, with what only God created as relation. And for others, as now forward, that creation and God are one and the same, only in relation. Thus, having the fruits of origin without the truth of the fallen state, and ignores what then is truly absent. Creating in itself is not redemption, only relation with God, only as God is the beginning of relation. If anything speaks to the good and evil of the days of Noah, it is that the heroes of old and men of renown were thoroughly integrated in the creation of creation, creatures, and created, regardless of their dimensional origin in the created states. The use of God's language, which is key, as a parallel of days lived, extended, speaks to those days and those that would follow and will. The flood is not a division of origin and progression. It is the first act of the infinite God being love, and the contrast to the betrayal of God through the creational order and civilization, regardless of the use of the language of God, more because of their use, and people seeking God. One can read Psalm 92 as their law, as a memory of those days. Jesus thus quotes Psalm 92 in their law as the continual conflict with the origin of the gospel and God's love. John 10:34, which speaks future tense. The covenant with Noah and all of creation established the ethical order as part of the creational order and civilization, that is the judgment of rights and duties, rewards and punishments for all the created, yes, even animals. It was the denial of the fallen state. It built upon that state the need towards the gospel. The progression gives us over and over that every renaissance is not a rebirth, but the death of the old, and reformations are the new order built upon a true reading of Scripture and or the creation itself. Fear and dread, now part of creation, are introduced because of the fall, and the gospel is now as origin, beginning to be given in the covenant with Noah. This is the end of video number 5. Please go to video number 6. Thank you.